Hello, New York. Hello, world. It's time to listen to the man in the know, the man in the flow, AC Lowe. Interesting guests, music and news, and just about everybody's views. Now, live from New York, it's the AC Lowe Show over the City World Radio Network.
Well, hello, we're back. It's AC Lowe, and we're back after quite a long hiatus, and we have with us this evening in the studio our good friend and oftentimes the host of the AC Lowe Show and the Bill Russo Show, our good friend Vinny Lippitti. Hello, Vinny. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
It's great to have you. It seems like you and I and Bill, we passed through many obstacles since the last time the three of us were on the air together. We'll talk about a few things this evening, and we'll play a little bit of music. But the main thing I want to say is I'm so happy to be back and to talk to our fans who have been listening to this program and the Bill Russo Show and all the shows on the City World Radio Network for quite some time. This is the 10th year, if you can believe it, of our program, and I'm sorry about the hiatus. It was something we couldn't help. And I want to give a shout-out and again give a thanks to Joyce McKinney. She's given us this spot here for this evening. This is normally her show with Joyce McKinney, and she'll be back next week with interesting guests and exciting information about the city at large and many other varied topics. But for now, all the ladies out there, your boyfriend is back. It's AC Lowe, and I'm back with all of the music and all the news and all of the information and all of the guests and all of the best of everything. So let's cue that up. If you can punch that up, Jade, and let's play that.
And you hung around and bothered me every night. And when I wouldn't go out with you, you said things that weren't very nice. My boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble. Hey la, my boyfriend's back. When you see him coming, better cut out on the double. Hey la, my boyfriend's back. You've been spreading lies that I was untrue. Hey la, my boyfriend's back. So look out now, 'cause he's coming after you.
Yeah, your boyfriend's back. The AC Lowe Show on the City World Radio Network. And all the other great guys that are here almost every night of the week, I believe. We have some kind of program with a gentleman, including the weekends and the City World Radio Network with all the infinite variety of programming that's here. So, Vinny, we haven't heard from you in a while, and we're glad to have you back. And there's a couple of things I want to talk. I mean, we have an interesting situation in Washington at the present time, and there's a lot to talk about with that. I'm just curious now where we are. We're not shutting the government. That's the last information. The government remain open.
The government is operating under dubious circumstances, but if you want to talk about Washington, D.C. and the state of our
yes, why not?
Country. You want to get into that?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. I'm not politically motivated, so it can go either way, left, right.
You're not politically motivated. You can go either way? Yeah.
Well, I have my own view, but I like to be neutral here on the AC Lowe Show because my fans, they have a wide variety of ideas about everything. Right now, recently I saw the president speaking and making his case for an emergency where he was going to take some money from the military, which, as I understand, is the right of the president as the commander-in-chief to evaluate the budget of the military.
But it has to be a real national emergency.
Agreed. And that was the point I want to make is that he characterized every single person coming here as no good, a drug dealer, a communist, and every other thing and all. And we're joined now by an old hand here at the City World Radio Network, the important cog in the wheel here, who's been sorely missing and sorely missed. Bill Russo is back with us. And I got to say, just to interrupt our conversation for a minute, Vinny, I want to say when we went back on the air and played music, I had an exhilaration which I haven't felt since Rosa Schwartz left for Florida over more than 35 years ago. So I want to say it's a thrill to be back with our ace engineer, Jade Zibrick, is here and doing a great job as usual. So we're talking, and the president characterized every single person as a great evil, and I thought that was inappropriate. Have you ever read anything, and my fans out there, Dave Winslow, he's been talking about the border for...
Well, if you want to talk about immigration, I mean, it's not about the wall, it's about having a policy. And
exactly.
Of course, both Republicans and Democrats for many years, matter of fact, about 6-7 years ago, I think they called them the Gang of Eight, if I remember correctly.
Yes, indeed.
Marco Rubio and a few other Republicans, 4 Republicans to be exact, came together with a plan to revamp the immigration policy in this country. And whatever it is, I mean, you have to come up with something that's fair, that's legal, that's legitimate, that's in sync with the values of what this country is all about. And they've just refused to do that. It's kind of
like we threw that book in the garbage.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. So
we had the same situation beginning from 1890, and the government came up with Ellis Island. And while Ellis Island had many failures and pitfalls and mistakes, it also processed almost 10 million people over 25 years. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at it with the perspective of 100 years, they did a very good job compared to what we did. There were facilities there with doctors, nurses, police officers, social workers, psychiatrists, pediatricians, child care, and every other possibility. There was money invested in processing these people properly. What we've done here, in my opinion, is we've created an alienation system where this is the enemy, and we have to defend ourselves. And other than how it was done in Ellis Island, and given that the Ellis Island idea was over 125 years ago, it just seems inappropriate to me.
A great many Americans in this country do not want brown people or black people coming into this country. If they're European, that's okay. That works for them. But if they're not what they look like, of the immigrants that came in the 20s and 30s,
right?
And
They
40s,
all came from Europe.
There's a problem with that. Now, I mean, you can deny, you don't have to talk about it, but it's a fact. It really
Absolutely.
is a fact, and it exists.
Absolutely, you hit it on the head.
But once again, we don't. I'm not saying that we should have unlimited immigration and let everybody in, but there should be some kind of sensible policy. And once you have that, and with the possibility and a pathway for citizenship for many of the people that are here already, because you can't deport 11 or 12 million illegal illegal immigrants all at once, or even over a span of time. You have to find a way to kind of like meld them into the society, and they become citizens, U.S. citizens, and taxpayers, and part of the economy, and people that eventually this country could be proud of. But to make walls, to try and build walls, and to call these people names, to mock them, is really a disservice. And look, you want to get into this presidency. I don't think we have enough time to do that. But
it's only a 1 hour show.
I mean, if we talk about and we try to legitimize what he has said over the last couple of years, it's really it's bizarre, and because it's surreal, because no president No one in that office has ever spoken the way he has and come out with statements and comments about the government and our allies. You can go on and on and on. And the point is, here's a man who shouldn't be there. Unfortunately, he was elected. He was legitimately, I guess, elected.
That's the serious problem. About half the people think he's great.
Decades from now, we may not.
I think he's great, too. I think he's the greatest president since P.T. Barnum. I don't think anyone can equate with Barnum as well as he has. I just want to digress for a moment and welcome officially the co-host of our program and the mentor in the radio business for me, and the guy who's just was sorely missed here at City World Radio. And like I said, it's such an exhilarating experience to be back on the air. Hello to Bill Russo.
Well, thank you, Anthony. It's good to be on the air with you, my mentor, my hero, my leader when it comes to my introduction into the radio world. And, of course, to be here in the presence of Vince Lipari, the seasoned broadcaster who's had tremendous television and radio experience. This is just really a pleasure to be here with you guys. I can't say that I agree with you guys on everything, but that's what radio is all about. It's about discussion. It's about, just talking and listening to our listeners, giving feedback, talking about our experiences. It's just been great. It's been great doing the City World Radio. It's a great station. We have Jade Zabrick, a great engineer. This is the future, and radio is evolving. People are more and more turning to internet radio. Podcasts are very popular now. So
I think this is the only program, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's one of the few programs where there are three single men who are free to voice their opinion and not live in fear of retribution when they return home. I think it's it's like a watershed experience where you can say what you think and go home and not be in fear.
Unless there's a crowd builds outside, depending on what
then
you
we have
say.
a problem.
Well, those days are over for me. I used to have a crowd outside, but no more.
Yeah.
I did go through that. We were saying earlier, before you arrived, Bill, that all three of us have gone through some substantial challenges during the last time that the three of us were on the radio. And fortunately, we've come through. And are back here on the air, and we're really proud of that. I'm going to ask Jade to cue up. One of the things about being single, I want you to play Richard Blandon and the Dubs. Please don't ask me to be lonely. And while our engineer cues that
Don't
up,
ask me either.
Yeah, it's really hard to go through all of those things. That's one of the issues of when you first are living alone, whether by choice or by force or by all kinds of different ways. I guess the best is by choice, that you have to adjust to being by yourself.
Ask me for the world, it doesn't seem much. Ask me for the moon, dear, and I'll reach out to touch anything for you, dear, only. But please don't ask me to be lonely. Ask me for the stars, dear, and I'll fulfill your demand. Ask me for the diamonds, I'll put them on your hand. Anything for you, dear, only. But please don't ask me to be lonely. This world, this whole wide world, looking for a girl such as you. I gave up my search when I looked into. Doobie, doobie, doobie. Ask me for the stars, dear, and I'll fulfill your demand.
Richard Blandon and the Dubs, 1957. Please Don't Ask Me to Be Lonely. One of the great groups here in New York, one of the great doo-wop groups originating where so many groups originated in West Harlem and also in the South Bronx, at least a dozen girl groups in the South Bronx in a 10-block area, including the Socialites and the Chantels, to which I am indebted to. Talking about Arlene Francis with the Chantels and also Lorraine Anthonio with the Socialites. Okay, so we're back here with Vinnie Liberty and Bill Russo, and I want to talk a little bit about what happened to our mayor, Mr. de Blasio. He happened to go on The View. I don't know if anyone happened to see that. He was on The View, and Whoopi Goldberg and 3 or 4 other people, and those women never seem to agree when they're on the they beat the hell out of the mayor. Oh my gosh, they kicked him around. He didn't expect it because I saw that he looked kind of bedazzled. And especially Whoopi, she went after him on the bicycle thing. And I have to admit, she said exactly what I think. And I guess there must be, because a lot of people were clapping and jumping and standing up. So I guess a lot of people have the same opinion.
What do you mean bicycle thing?
She said, what the hell made you think that by eliminating an entire lane of traffic and taking away thousands of parking spaces, you would improve the situation for most New Yorkers? What were you thinking? Where was your head? And we one after the other. I can't remember everything. And the mayor and then the other ones jumped in, and they usually disagree with Whoopi. That's the whole thing of the show, that they have this collision.
How many women were there?
5 women. And this poor man...
Would you hold up under that type of scrutiny?
I would have caved. I would have cracked under the pressure. I would have caved in. He tried to make some excuses, and a woman referred to a lane near her block. She said that she lives there 30 years. She never saw a bicyclist yet. So I know that because in Queens we have a lot of lanes that were eliminated, and I haven't seen a bicyclist yet either. What do you make of it, Vinny?
Well, I live in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of bicycles, and we have a lot of those Citibank bike depots, whatever you want to call them.
Well, they're paying the freight.
They're paying the freight, and of course they do take up 3, 4, 5 spots when they put one of these Citibank things in. And yes, there are a lot of cyclists in Brooklyn, and they have their own lanes, etc. And I don't know if I have a problem with them so much, except that if you're driving, of course, it makes it a little bit more dangerous for the driver and for them as well, because when you're making a turn, you always have to watch out that there's nobody in that lane coming or whatever. So it's just more of a congested situation, though. But I understand the concept. You want to get people out of the cars and riding the bikes. But
I don't think anybody's leaving their car in Massapequa and taking a bike in, though. No, I think the people on bikes were the same people that were walking and that were in the train. The other thing that she said, which I've said to Bill probably half a dozen times, she said, you're telling everyone to go into the public transportation system like a bunch of cattle. She says, what would happen if 3 million people tomorrow left their car and got on the subway? She says, the subway is already choked. And she's right about that.
I think
it's been very poor investment, and investment kind of like jackass at a time kind of investment. But what do you make of that? Yes, Bill?
I think the problem has to do with a lot of different things. Changes in laws, in demographics, in zoning, that has led to a tremendous amount of overpopulation, overdevelopment, and congestion that we've never seen. The city has the largest population that it's ever had before, the largest number of households, because there's no longer, a typical mother-father family with a 2, 3, 4-bedroom apartment. Most new buildings go up maximum maybe a couple of 3-bedroom apartments and then 2-bedroom, but mostly 1 and studio predominantly. So you have more people in more spaces, but the spaces accommodate the overpopulation. So if you, regardless of whether you have bicycles on the road or not, and I think the View perspective when de Blasio was attacked for increasing bicycle lanes, it misses the point that the overcongestion is a result of changes, particularly in zoning. If you go downtown Brooklyn, you'll see 60-story buildings. We never were there before. But even worse, if you go to Ocean Parkway, Ocean Avenue, Kings Highway, you see 12-story buildings where there used to be 3-story buildings with a candy store on the first floor.
I call your attention to Long Island City
Long Island City
and
is
Flushing. They have their own skyline. I'm talking 25, 30-story residential buildings.
okay. So
What about the one in Chinatown? I think is 60 stories
right. So
residential.
you take a 10 square block area in Long Island City, or even in Chinatown, which is starting to get. Chinatown has a restriction of 7 stories, but in downtown Brooklyn, Long Island City, even in Greenpoint, Williamsburg, some single-story manufacturing buildings where they used to make dolls and belts and machine gear are now 12-story glass and steel.
Condos, yeah.
Right. So you can put as many bikes as you want, but people have to get into a car. Either they want to own a car, they're going to be visited by somebody with a car, somebody's going to deliver something with a car, or they're going to call Uber or Lyft or Lime or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there are actually more cars on the road as a result of the overdevelopment, no matter how many bicycles you put there.
But I think
it's the problem is congestion that was planned, and my problem is the reason it was planned that way was to put more money into the treasury of the city and the state, and yet there's a budget crisis that de Blasio declares. And the problem is spending more because you got more. And it's a vicious cycle. And that's a big problem. The congestion, the only congestion they alleviate is the congestion in the treasury. They take the money out.
Yes, well, that brings us to a point. Go ahead, Bill, Vinny, before I want to make a point, but you were going to say?
No, I was going to say that I think anyone who has a car, who lives in New York City, who lives in Manhattan or lives in Brooklyn, with the exception of possibly Queens, but if you live in those boroughs, you'd be insane to have a car. There are a lot of other services you could have, like, for instance, Zipcar, and there are other companies where you can rent a car for a couple of hours to 24 hours, whatever. If you need a car to get out of town, you can do it, but on a day-to-day basis to worry about alternate side of the street parking and worrying about whether you're going to get a ticket or not, and worrying about finding a parking space like you
Right.
tried to find
Yeah,
before, Bill.
yeah.
And, I mean, in my neighborhood, it's the same situation. You'll look for 20, 25 minutes. You can't find a parking spot. I mean, it's very frustrating. So I think from a resident's point of view, don't have a car. You really shouldn't have a car. It doesn't make any logistical sense.
Well, I think there's a congresswoman that doesn't want us to have air flights anymore.
Yeah, Mrs. Ocasio. That's a whole other show. I just passed a garage today. It was on 75th Street between Park and Lexington, a very expensive neighborhood, and they're charging $59.10 for a maximum 24 hours,
Wow.
and their monthly rate is $11.56. Why it's $11.56 and not $11.53 or $1,156. But if you want to be on the main floor, it's $200 more. And if you want to have a assigned spot, add $200 more. So if you're on the main floor and in an assigned spot, that's $1,556 a month to park the car. But it's a lot cheaper than $60 a day, which comes out to $1,800. So that's the status of parking. Now, you talk about the Treasury. Let's talk about what's up with the Amazon. You think that behind the scenes, the Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio will do the mea culpa with Bezos and convince him to return?
I think the whole...
You hit it on the head. During the week, I'm sorry to interrupt you. During the week we talked, and you said, shame on the governor and the mayor being upstaged by two local guys, politicians that got elected by the skin of their ass. I mean, very unusual.
It was poorly thought out. You have the governor of the state of New York, whose Democratic Party is in control of both houses of the state and Senate. You have the mayor of New York, who is in a Democratic city, it's all Democrats. You have a newly elected congresswoman who is very vocal against Amazon, who should be advocating for the working poor for jobs. And I think that from the beginning, the mayor and the governor both wanted to get credit for bringing Amazon to Long Island City, kept people out of the loop, engineered it, put it through, made the announcement, and then the protests started by elected officials spurred by community leaders. Now, it should have been already ironed out, agreed to, and everyone happy that Amazon was coming, without any dissension within the the political party itself that was trying to bring the Amazon to Long Island City. In Long Island City, there are two major public housing developments. Queensbridge Houses, which is the largest public housing development, I think, in the nation. And then you have Astoria Houses, which is not far. And then across the way, you have East River Houses, you have the Reese House, you have the Lower East Side. People can get to Long Island City by train, the poor. Whether it was going to be a union company on the premises, it was non-union. The point I'm making is the leadership should have shepherded it through, get the jobs. 25,000 jobs is needed by the poor. And they totally, it was a power play. It was about ego. And these local people, Janice, Ocasio-Cortez, they were more concerned about getting publicity, saying, we're against it. It's extortion. No law, nothing in the Constitution says that a company has to hire union, non-union. No law says that.
Well,
they
the
have to
unions
get
dropped the ball too. They were fortunate enough to negotiate the construction by union. They should have left it alone, let them move here, let them
Correct.
be here, and then talk about that.
Well, the time to organize a union is after the company's established. Then you say,
Yeah.
well, we're going to organize the workers of Amazon, but not to say you must hire a union and we're not going to let you in. You must do this. You must do that. And you know what? They're going to find another place, another town, to set up their operation, and the people there who could be in white Appalachia or the heart of deep South Mississippi with a black population, they'll find a way to get the same thing done because
I'm surprised
transportation
that-
doesn't matter anymore.
What-
These were offices.
Wasn't
They
part
could
of-
be anywhere.
Wasn't part of the deal that the people that they hired to have an average salary of $100,000? So it
Well,
was
they
never
were-
really meant that they were going to hire people from the Bronx.
No, a big company like that, you need doormen, you need cleaners, you need receptionists, you need businesses would
So how
open
do you
up,
ma- so
small
how-
businesses would open up, people would be working in coffee shops. It would have been a tremendous boon to the
No, I
economy.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. I agree with you. But I think, but when they talked about that, they were required to, those 25,000 people that they created jobs for, the average salary would be $100,000. I mean, that's what I've read.
Well, as a tech company, that would be
So
when
you'd
you
have to-
average it out with the high level $200,000, $300,000 salaries
Well,
and others.
I think the question really is how many jobs would really happen for people in the neighborhood. We've heard numbers thrown about on many, many projects over the last 10 or 12 years. And
That's Mayor de Blasio. Tell him we're
Mayor
not
de
here.
Blasio
Jay,
calling
tell
in.
him we're not here.
No, we were talking about congestion before. It's a balancing act to talk about the bikes and the cars. Of course, Amazon and Long Island City would have just increased that congestion in that area, even though, of course, it would have brought many jobs and improved the neighborhood. And like you say, would have spawned other businesses. It would have upgraded the whole area. But again, the other side of that is that you're going to have a lot more cars and a lot more pedestrians and a lot more people and
Well, then, if that was the case, then don't do it in the first place and get everybody's hopes up. I really feel that the people in public housing, the poor people, got shafted in this deal because of politicians who live very well and they have their drivers and everything. They benefited from the limelight, and now they're all pointing fingers in a lot of different directions. And I blame the mayor and the governor because they should have organized like a team. Get in a huddle and say, look, this is what we want to do. Everyone has to be on board.
they made an end run that backfired.
I said
but
it-
it really backfires on the people because while I doubt sincerely that there were 25,000 jobs for people in the project, there certainly would have been a few hundred jobs along the
It
lines
would
that
have
you're
been more
talking
than
about.
100. There would have been a lot of
No,
jobs.
a few hundred. It would have been a few hundred. If they opened up a plant, a facility plant, then there would be thousands of jobs. They still
There would
a
have
lot
been
of-
internships. The companies, like all these companies are evil companies. A lot of these companies actually do help young people, and that they give internships. They should have just put it all together and made it work. And that's my own opinion. I think that it was a big loss for the city. But now they have to decide, well, you have that land. I imagine, I don't know if Amazon owns it or they're going to sell it. Find a way to make it work and make it work for everybody.
Yeah, it might still happen because I think that the fallout. What happened is that Ocasio, for sure, she got elected from the fringe end of the Democratic
Right.
Party because nobody votes in the primary. And Crowley, who was there 30 years, wasn't putting much thought in the primary anymore, and he got aced out. So she in no way reflects all of the people in that area. It's the same thing almost like Tea Party. Some of these Tea Party people get in on the far right because only a handful of extremists vote in the primary, and you end up with a person that really doesn't reflect all Republicans of every ilk.
The other side of that is also there's a possibility that we really don't know the reason why Amazon pulled out. That possibly there were other factors, other considerations, and the real reasons we won't know for a while, and they're using the local opposition as the excuse. As
It
the
could
reason,
be that, too.
A big corporation like Amazon to pull out just because you got a couple of local politicians protesting, saying you're not wanted here. I think if they wanted to, they could have kind of brought both sides together. They could have tried to appease the other side, met with them.
That's a very good point because the information that and the other part I can't figure is that there seemed to be a huge group of people who live in Queensbridge houses who wanted Amazon. Quite contrary to what
absolutely.
Ocasio and the other person, I forgot the other politician's name, but quite contrary to what Ocasio was saying, there seemed to be a very large group. One of them was headed by the Tenants Association,
Right.
that they were in total disagreement with.
But they could have made some concessions. They could have talked to them. They could have come together.
Isn't it Andrew Cuomo's New York State of Mind commercials about how it's great to do business in the state of New York? I guess in Long Island City it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a shame there. So that brings us. We're going to have to revisit that subject, I'm sure. The New York City Housing Authority, of which our friend Bill Russo is an expert, a person from sanitation who I like very much, Catherine Garcia, the mayor in his wisdom has appointed her to become the chairman of the Housing Authority, or temporary chairman. And I wonder why, because she was doing a fairly good job. Why would you punish her? Because in my view, and admittedly knowing nothing, zero, about the agency, I think that right now, under the present circumstances of a lack of funding and such a poor reputation at this point, that this is a no-win position, chairman of the New York City Housing Authority, unless someone's going to really find funding to do the things that have to be done. Where are you with that, Bill?
Again, I think that it's a question of leadership and putting the right person in the right position. Take, for example, Ben Carson. He's the HUD secretary. And history is full of people like Mitt Romney, who ran the Olympics, who are pure managers, leaders. You could have taken Vince Lombardi and told him to run Amazon in the modern era, and he could run Amazon. It just had leadership skills. And I think what was lacking in the Housing Authority prior to Ms. Garcia taking over on a pro tem basis was leadership, but also you have to have a certain level of expertise at the middle level and down to the first line supervisor, people who actually know what they're doing, and people who are trained to know what they're doing. And the problem with the Housing Authority, it's property. You can't, you can't fix a boiler if you don't know how to fix a boiler. You can't provide heat and hot water. You can't clean a building. You can't make repairs unless you know how to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, you have to be trained. And if you're not doing it right, you have to be
disciplined. Just hold that 1 second. I want to learn a little bit.
Yeah.
Is the repair function in the Housing Authority centralized?
No, there are about 330 separate housing developments in the Housing Authority. And some of those developments are clustered together. So there are about 200 management offices. And they, all together, those management offices are run by a property manager. A property manager has a maintenance supervisor known as the superintendent, and then they have staff.
But do the repair people come from a local place or from a central
place? The repair
place?
people generally come from on-site unless it's a skilled trade, like a bricklayer, a carpenter, or somebody of a higher skill.
Boiler?
The boilers are supposed to be maintained on the premises by a separate crew of trained technicians.
Standpipe license people?
Standpipe, fireman license, whatever they call it now.
The reason I asked that question is that being a little bit, having a passing familiarity with Department of Sanitation in New York City, all repairs come from a centralized function. We have a system whereby the repair requests go in through channels, and these repairs are looked at and then prioritized. And the repair people go out every day including our emergency repair, whether it's a frozen door in the wintertime and the trucks can't get out or in, whether it's the boiler and no heat, whatever it is, it's centralized. I'm curious if when she comes there and she makes an examination of procedures, if she'll attempt to do this in some kind of different way. I don't know. That's why I asked. That's the reason I asked that question. We're nowhere near the size of you. The Department of Sanitation, when I left, we had 410 buildings in 5 boroughs. 410 buildings. And we're responsible for elevators, doors, cranes, boats, all kinds of pipes, electrical, technical, computer, on and on and on without end. And that's what we've been doing. And we don't have that. Given that it's nowhere near this magnitude of the challenge that it's in the Housing Authority, but we've been able to maintain our facilities under that system. I'm curious whether she will attempt to, or will just be a caretaker. I don't know.
I think she'll probably focus on fulfilling the mission in general of providing decent, safe, and sanitary housing. That's the mission of the Housing Authority. And then look at the structure. Look at the people who are in the structure. Look at the assignments. Look at how things are being done. Maybe it's better to have private industry to do some things, like landscaping. The Housing Authority has grounds persons who work year-round. That's their title. They get paid year-round to work on the grounds. Well, in a weather like today, tomorrow, what do they do? They're supposed to be using that downtime to get their machines ready and prep for a storm. But there's a lot of downtime in the winter, so there are different ways.
The Parks Department does the same thing.
There are ways of doing things differently, and that's what that's what she has to do. She has to look at is what being done now in the interests of the tenants, not in the interests of the union, not in the interests of civil service, and then sometimes things have to be changed. There are possibly some jobs that are better suited to have civil service do. I recall in the Housing Authority, we used to have consultants who would come in and tell you, well, we have a computer program for you, and that'll help you keep track of all your residents who have disabilities. I'm just giving that as an example. Oh, great. So they would provide the software, and then they would say to you, well, this is proprietary software. We're the only ones that have it, so you have to keep us here. So they get a contract extension year after year to stay as a consultant, you know. So the answer would be to...
That's that game. That is that game. That's right. Exactly how
the
it's
answer
played.
would be to find a vendor or find an opportunity to create software that doesn't require you use the same one vendor all the time. So there are a lot of options, to manage things. And the point is, if you get the right leadership, you can change things. It's not about money either. I see sometimes where not just the Housing Authority, other entities say, well, we're not getting the money from the federal government. The federal government is not mopping the floors. There's a difference between day-to-day operations and doing a major roof replacement or new windows or cabinets.
What do you make of the possibility? New York is one of the few cities left with public housing. Newark abandoned public housing 20 years ago, just moved everybody out and knocked the projects down. Chicago has done it to most of it, but not all. Baltimore is very near the end of its public housing. I think Boston gave up public housing. Public housing seems to be going by the boards. Now, what do you make of that as an option?
That's the governor. Don't let him in. I think. Again, getting back to the mission, if the reason you have public housing was created to help people who couldn't afford market rate housing, you can require, which they do now in many buildings, new buildings, require a private landlord to set aside a certain number of apartments for market rate housing. If that works, then that is the mission. The mission is not to create a whole system of only public units. In fact, sometimes that's not the best solution because especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, public housing was kind of like overpopulated, if you will, with single-family households, drug problems, addictions, etc.
Dr. Robert Caro, who's a great historian here in New York and wrote the book about the power broker, Robert Moses, his contention is that Moses knew full well that he would pull up put up 25 buildings where everyone was out of work, had no job, and was poor, cut them off by highways on either side, and then be shocked that there's crime there. He knew full well what he was doing. Now, Caro's not just anybody. He's a really excellent research guy, and he cites many instances where this could have been prevented. But that's one issue. Let's we're talking about New York. We're talking about the Housing Authority. We're talking about the Department of Sanitation. We're talking about Bill de Blasio, and we're talking about the governor, our man Andrew Cuomo, and we're talking about so many issues: the bicycles and Vinny in Brooklyn and not having any cars. Let's play New York with Frank Sinatra, Jay. Let's cue up New York with Frank Sinatra, because after all of these problems are New York problems, and I think we could have had the same program probably in 1946, 1956, and 1966. The ongoing problems.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. New York, I want to wake up in a city that never sleeps and find I'm a number one, top of the list, king of the hill, a number one. These little town blues are melting away. I'm gonna make a brand new start of it in old New York. And if I can make it there, I'm gonna make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York, New York.
Yeah, old Blue Eyes, Frankie Sinatra, a boy from Hoboken. His father was a civil servant. His father was a fireman in Hoboken, New Jersey. And he was able to come across here to the big city lights. And that song became an icon, a musical icon. They used to play it at the end of every Yankee game. And another one that he didn't think would go anywhere. Sometimes he would joke about it, Frank. He would say what songs he turned down and who made a big hit with them, and that he was offered it first and decided not to do it, and so on and so forth. We are on the City World Radio Network. We broadcast to you live. Right now we're broadcasting between 6 and 7 p.m. We normally broadcast on Monday nights at 7 p.m. This is the AC Lowe Show. I am AC Lowe, and I'm so happy, I am thrilled, ecstatic, flipping my gourd to be back here. on
Flipping
the
your
AC.
what?
Yes, that's right. You heard it correctly. I'm flipping my gourd.
Gourd is a vegetable, isn't it?
Gourd is a vegetable. It appears to be somewhat of a disrupted pumpkin. A smaller one.
A
at that.
wannabe pumpkin.
A wannabe pumpkin.
Never made
right.
it full blown.
I've got to say, when I came back on
What's
the
the
air,
difference between flipping your gourd and flipping the bird?
well, I don't flip the bird on the air because I respect my fans here at City World Radio. But it really was a thrill. It all kidding aside, to return
Certainly
to the
is.
air. And I know that you feel the same way, Bill. And we're so glad to have Vinny here tonight, who's covered us more times than we can remember when we weren't able to be here. And we really appreciate that, Vinny. It helps out. We're indebted to you because we really don't have anyone that capable as you are. You're very capable,
you're
and
being
we can
very
bring you
kind.
in at the very last second with almost no information, and you do absolutely great.
I don't know. You do that pretty well yourself.
Except when
Yeah.
I had him lined up with a guest who had brain damage.
What?
No, that was the one. No, that was that was the one who spoke Russian.
Russian, yeah,
Yes,
right.
not English.
Well, I'm not going to say any names.
But we managed to do
I know.
45 minutes.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
that we were very fond of.
Did she have anything to do with the campaign? The Trump?
No, this was pre-Trump.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, pre-Trump.
these were the good old days.
Do you recall the night that someone, a friend of ours, I won't say the name, but sent us someone that was supposed to be an expert in something or other, and we had some information, and the person knew nothing whatsoever about that, and was talking about traveling back to Yugoslavia, and how there's a whole bunch of people that want to return. And and we didn't know what she was talking about. We did
and we never saw or heard from them again.
A 1 hour show.
The best was
It wasn't dog related.
the best unexpected guest was the sword swallower.
The sword is not great radio, but you have
No,
to understand the concept.
A lot of gulping.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I checked that sword, and it was absolutely
So did
legit.
I, yeah.
It wasn't a collapsible sword. It wasn't a trick sword. She manipulated herself in such a manner.
She's good at swallowing.
Well, right up to the handle.
Could have been a wonderful surgeon.
Too many straight lines here for the AC Lowe Show.
yeah,
We have to move forward, onward and upward.
Onward and upward.
We have to move forward here. So we were talking about the housing authority and all of these other different things that go on, and the concept of not having public housing in New York, and also the book by Robert Caro, The Power Broker, where he postulates that Moses did a great disservice to the city in building and grouping together large groupings of public housing. He said that there was economy of scale, efficiency in construction, saving money, and so on. But he failed to mention that you're going to put 10,000 poor people with no jobs into an isolated area, and then all of a sudden you're going to see crime. And that shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. Now, initially, in some of the first housing stuff that was built in the 30s, that didn't necessarily follow. But as time went by, and particularly the ones in the Bronx, when he cut a swath with the Cross Bronx Expressway and built them on both sides, and then caught the Sheridan Expressway, the highway to nowhere, which is going to be closed shortly, the highway that goes nowhere, but it did close off the Bronx River houses and a couple of other houses, and all into that triangle where there's no way out.
Well, I think in general, segregation, whether it's by race, by color, by income, segregating the poor in neighborhoods creates problems and also creates stereotypes, creates resentment. And sometimes even the media segregates in a way, and I'll explain what I mean. The media may stereotype Italian Americans, for instance, and the video, film, TV productions that depict Italian Americans in the same stream of, bandits, barbarians, bimbos,
Mafia.
Right. That becomes popular because it builds on popularity. That who's creating the popularity? Is it real, based on the demographics, or is it created? And that can be a problem until people step forward, generally within the same group itself. And I give credit to the African American community for bringing attention to the symbols of hatred, the symbols that are
Absolutely
a problem, and and really bring up bad experiences in the history of the African American community. So, whether it's housing, which is what we were talking about, or anything else, when you start singling out a people or singling out a group for whatever reason, and then physically putting them somewhere or physically showing them in the same way, that creates a terrible mindset.
Well, we've come full circle because we began this discussion, Vinny and I, with immigration, and the president characterizing the vast multitude of people coming up to the border as evil, that they are all evil, they're all connected to the drugs, they're all going to be...
I don't think he said that. I think he said that many, not all, and what he's trying to
What do you think his message was? That only a handful are like that? Or that you're going to be in trouble if we don't stop them? I think that the gist of his message was that they're really bad and they got to be stopped.
His message is that the border is open. That's the number one message, that you can cross the border and bring in illegal drugs, human trafficking, prostitution, whatever. That's the message. I think he's already acknowledged that we need immigration. And how we get the immigration is how it has to be worked. And this is going on for 40, 50 years. And it's not just the Republicans. The Democrats were in control. They could have done something, but they didn't. In fact, the last major immigration reform was under Reagan.
Well, yeah, but what was it? Reform is one thing. What was the nature of the reform?
He had
Did it create more trouble?
He had an amnesty program, Reagan. Reagan had amnesty. And Obama administration was more an open border, and that's when people... That's why we had the problem.
But he also deported more people than any president so far,
isn't that something?
Including Trump.
Yeah.
He deported more people for criminal activity than all other presidents combined. And Trump doesn't mention it. He mentions that Obama did nothing about it. It's not true.
Well,
it's not true. He deported more people than any.
But overwhelmingly, the policy that Obama had, allowing children to come unescorted across a border with no wall, for the humanity of it all, how a parent could let their child.
I'm not taking it personal, but my grandfather came here at 11 years old by himself. I'm not taking it personal.
He was sponsored.
But think of.
I don't know that he was sponsored, but he was alone.
Yeah, he
no
was
one
alone,
came with him.
He was known to the on the ship manifest. They knew
yeah.
The difference with European immigration is an ocean between.
You said the key word. The difference of European immigration.
Wait,
the
word is ocean. That's the word.
Hold that thought.
As usual, you can't build a wall in the ocean.
We're going to get right back to this on the next AC Lowe Show. With any kind of luck, it should be here very soon again. And maybe even before that. I see by the shadow on the floor that we've already run out of time. My great thanks to Vince Perry. Thanks again, Vinny, for coming, and really appreciate that. And hope you'll be on another 10 million shows with us. Thanks to Bill Russo, and we might be on the Bill Russo show next time, Vinny. You and I will be interacting with Bill Russo. And I want to take a ride out here. Put on my friend, let's go with Speedo and the Cadillacs as we ride out of here on the AC Lowe show. This is AC Lowe from New York saying thank you and good night.
Now they often call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. Now they often call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. No, for me to random fellas and taking other folks' girl. Well, now they often call me Speedo, 'cause I don't believe in wasting time. Well, now they often call me Speedo, 'cause I don't believe in wasting time. Well, I'm known for pretty women, and that caused them to change their mind. Well, now some may call me Joe, some may call me Mo. Yes, man, my Speedo, he don't never take it slow. Well, now they often call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. Now they often call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. Speedo, he don't never take it slow. Well, now they all call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. Well, now they all call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister. And now they gonna call me Speedo till they call off making pretty girls.
Hi, Grandma. Can Nina come over for dinner?
Sure. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
If anyone ever does, I want you to say, no, I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
I promise, Grandma.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit under